Hey, everybody. Mike Huseman here, welcoming you to our second episode of Off Season After Dark. And we also have another Mike with us here today. So we will be talking about many things that we covered last week, and you'll typically see us do on SEC After Dark. However, there will be a departure this week. We will be talking about the oldest conference in the country, apart from the Ivy League, of course, and the conference which has brought us the last two national champions. We move to the Big Ten today. We have Mike here, who, like myself, is a fellow Minnesotan. You can find him at Alibaba26 on Twitter. And for those of you seeing this on YouTube, the link will be below for his page. So, Mike, tell us a little bit about your focus and page and, the kind of stuff you're into here.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks so much for having me on the show. It's good to be here.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And my podcast is called We Live for Saturday. I do it with my buddy John, who goes by the moniker Norwegian Gopher on Twitter. And we started this podcast a couple years ago because we got tired of the way the media works. And essentially by that, I mean, if you're covering, say, the Big Ten, you hear a lot about Ohio State and Penn State and Michigan and Oregon now and USC, and also a lot about Nebraska, even when no matter whether they're bad or good. And you don't hear a lot about everybody else. You don't get a lot of in-depth coverage, even when teams are having great years, because the media serves the biggest brands above all.
We didn't hear much about Indiana until November last year. Like, that's a good point about that.
Yeah. And I was following Indiana all year, and we were celebrating them from the beginning. And like, look at this team just blasting teams. They weren't just winning; they were just crushing teams. So what we decided we wanted to do was have a show that was about all 18 Big Ten teams, not just the helmet schools. And we have stuck with that and with the focus that we're going to do every school in depth, because every school is important to the Big Ten and every school has a big fan base. And that's especially true in the Big Ten. We're talking about huge schools here. So I always get annoyed when media types are like, oh, smaller brands. I'm like, oh, smaller brands like Minnesota or Wisconsin or Iowa that all own a state?
Yeah.
Like own a big state?
That topic that's a very interesting topic. And I brought that up on our SEC After Dark a couple months ago, because I said a lot of the SEC people don't understand having only one power school in your state. It's a very different dynamic, and it creates a dynamic where people like you or I, who did your undergrad at smaller schools, you're still drawn to that as the state's flagship school.
Yeah, exactly. And you grow up rooting for them. I mean, I'm a third generation Gopher fan. I didn't even grow up strictly in Minnesota proper. I was across the river in Fargo. But, but my grandpa, God rest his soul, my grandpa Chet, he was on campus when the Gophers were winning national titles.
Okay.
And so he went through that and he would tell the stories. And so I grew up, steeped in kind of that Big Ten history. And, I could sing the Minnesota Rouser by the time I could walk. So
they're the last three-time national champion in a row for those of you out there. Yep.
They are. So thank you, Georgia, for screwing up the three-peat.
Absolutely. And that's your take there was very interesting to me, because like in our SEC After Dark, we try to get every school and viewpoints from every. I'm kind of fulfilling two roles: the South Carolina role, because that's where I did my grad school, but then also I try to fulfill that role of the Northerner and the outsider in the group to bring in a different perspective. And one difference that I thought of when you were talking about that, how in the Big Ten you only hear about the big brands. In the SEC, it's a little different in that you hear about everybody, but you hear about very little outside the SEC. The SEC people don't bother themselves with the West Coast or the Big 12 or the ACC to some extent. The Big Ten is relevant now because they've become the two dominants, but there very much is the SEC mindset of we are the big guys and better than everybody else. Some of it is earned, some of it is an inflated ego. Both of those two are accurate at the same time.
Yeah.
They,
And some of it
they
comes
talk-
from the fact that ESPN dominates the college football
it
news
does.
cycle.
Yeah. To
And
top to bottom.
so
Yeah.
there's a reason why about 2008 or about 2007 or 8 until now, you've gotten that SEC narrative. And a lot of times it's been true. Sometimes it hasn't been, but we've gotten that narrative ever since ESPN financially, invested itself heavily in the SEC. So I think, go ahead.
I would say our Alabama guy and I agree on this, that the SEC top to bottom is the best conference. Their top teams are not the best teams anymore. And that's where we've been at the last couple of years. Their better teams aren't better. Their bottom teams aren't better.
Here's my problem with that. When Alabama first started winning titles, when Florida first started winning titles, nobody argued that the SEC was the deepest conference. They said we're the best because we're winning national championships.
Yeah.
So now that the Big Ten is winning national championships, the media is like, oh gosh, I guess conference depth is what really matters. Let's focus on that. That's what defines the best conference. And I'm like, no. We spent the last 18 years being told that whichever conference had the biggest dogs who won the big prize, that was the best conference. And now you want to change that and pretend it's all about conference depth. I remember when the Big Ten went 8-1 in bowl season, and I want to say it was 2018. I think Michigan was the only loss. Dominated. Nobody was like the Big Ten's deeper than the SEC. Nobody was saying that because they aren't trying to protect that fragile SEC ego. So I think it's ridiculous that now, like, the people are like, now, oh yes, the SEC is still superior, and now it's a depth conversation. No, it was never a depth conversation. You're only saying that because the SEC has lost its stand at the top of the sport.
Certainly, I think in circles that definitely is true, and that might also apply the other way too. Of the Big Ten people may have been saying before, well, we're the deepest conference.
We were saying that. No, I know. I was one of them.
Yeah. So I definitely think that goes both ways. But no, I think that's a very good take, though, of trying to focus on all of the conference schools. And because really at the P4 level, they're all big schools. We're dealing with enrollments of thousands of people who are, for the most part, in big cities or well-established college towns with massive alumni networks all over the country. And they do all have something to give to all of us. And I wish, with our SEC group, certainly you can't have someone for all 16 teams. That, would be tough to do, but it would be nice to hear more from the schools we don't have, like hearing more from Arkansas would be fun sometimes, or Mississippi State. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
One thing we'll, kind of kicking off with, what the focus of my show is going to be, we're going to look at head coaches, quarterbacks, playoff stuff for the show, kind of the script. And what I'm going to try to do here, we were SEC before, that's been the network. Now, Big Ten, I'm going to try to make the rounds and find people from every conference and create a database, more or less, for people like you and I who are, doing pods, doing live streams to, be able to network and collaborate with each other. So this is episode 2. You're the first, outside of SEC person I'm, doing this with. But the goal is to
I
make
feel
the
privileged
conference-wise. Yep, absolutely. And I felt like the Big Ten was the logical place to start. We may go for the G5 next because for those of you who follow me on Twitter, my article out today was ranking the G5 or the Mountain West head coaches. So we go from 12 to 1 in everybody's rating the head coaches, as we're doing with the Big Ten here today. Very few people do it with the G5 though. So my Mountain West head coach rankings out today. But looking at this Big Ten head coach rankings at this list, Mike, does anything stand out to you, good or bad, that you would like to comment on? I have one off the top of my head, but if you have one that stands out to you, go for it.
No, you go first. I've got a few things I want to.
So my glaring one that I see first, Curt Cignetti should be a lot higher. I would have him 2 or 3. For me, Day deserves to be one. He's coming off of a national title. His winning percentage, you cannot argue against. It is beyond impressive. I would have Cignetti 2 or 3, and scandalous take, I might have James Franklin a little low. Like, I probably have him 4 or 5, because I would put Cignetti 2 or 3. Ferentz would still be high. He's done it for so long at a consistent rate. And then Lanigan would be, and I would put Rule below all those guys. Good as he is, he hasn't shown it yet at Nebraska.
Yeah. So I'll say the first thing I'll say is I'll agree with you. I had Cignetti at 2 on my list. And it's for a couple of reasons. One, if you're not in the Big Ten, you can't, it's hard to fathom how bad Indiana has been.
Yeah.
I mean, I think before last season, I think they'd been to like 3 bowl games since 1991. If you look at the last, we did a picture of tiered out the Big Ten of the last 15 years. And in the last 15 years, Indiana had a winning percentage, and not in Big Ten play, just in general, overall, of like, it was like in the mid-high 30s.
Oh, was that bad? Wow. I mean, the one good year they had was the wonky COVID year where they won 10 games with Tom Allen.
Yes, they were so good in COVID. And
where they had Michael Penix at QB, by the way.
Yes, and nobody could, right. I mean, nobody could watch that. My significant other comes from a big Indiana family. They've had long-time season tickets.
Okay.
And like, they told me that it's just expected that on senior day, but like they were like the only ones there because everyone else had given up on Indiana. So that's the culture that has been at Indiana.
Yeah.
So to take Indiana from being a pure basketball school that for football was an afterthought, and then to go 11-1 in the regular season, 8-1 in the Big Ten, and yes, I know it was a good in year one. And I know it was a good draw, but you know what? There is legit extensive, as we saw by the most recent NFL draft. Every team in the Big Ten and every team in the SEC has a bunch of NFL guys. They all do. Even the bad teams have a bunch of NFL talent. So you're playing against really high talent, you know, even when you're playing against teams that aren't as successful on the field. So part of it is that to go 11-1 and then, you know, end up 11-2 with your only losses to the national champion and national runner-up. Oh, go ahead.
The 2 teams in the national, the only 2 teams that beat them. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So there's that. That's part of it. But also, Cignetti in 15 years as a head coach has never had a losing season. And he coached at Elon, at IUP, at bad jobs in bad leagues where it's hard to recruit to. And he's won every single year. He's never even had to rebuild. And that's crazy. And last of all, people don't know this, but Curt Cignetti, when Nick Saban first got to Alabama and built his dynasty, his recruiting coordinator was Curt Cignetti.
Yep.
And what does everyone always say about Saban? They say he's the best at, I remember Glenn Mason used to talk about it all the time, that Nick Saban was better at evaluating talent at the high school level and projecting it forward into what they'll become in college than anyone else he'd ever met. Glenn Mason said that, and he was a coach for 50 years, you know?
Yeah. And he's a very successful one too.
Yes, absolutely. And so I just think that with Cignetti, you have to look at the whole. Like, I'm going to talk out both sides of my mouth because for my Big Ten rankings, I focus on what happens in the Big Ten. But I think with Cignetti, you really have to take into account everything else that has happened in his career and how successful he's been just all the time.
Yeah. And I get that. Like, you want to focus on one thing, but outside things have to play a role too. And the same thing with Matt Rule. The dude won at Temple. He won at Baylor. He's not done awful at Nebraska. He hasn't met expectations. Nobody since Tom Osborne's met expectations at Nebraska because they're ridiculous. But
let's talk about how Rule has done. He's been 12-13, 6-12 in the Big Ten. Last year in year 2, he went 7-6, but he went just 3-6 in the Big Ten. So he beat Colorado. Everyone's happy about that. But in conference play, he only won a third of his conference games. So
their conference wins were not to good teams. Purdue was absolutely terrible. They were one of the worst Big Ten teams I've ever seen.
Yep.
Rutgers was. I mean, that was 4.
Rutgers was decent.
Yeah. And that game was nobody could throw the ball. It ended up 14-7.
Right.
And I think they rolled Wisconsin late in the year,
Yep,
which was
they did.
Wisconsin had given up by then, pretty much.
Wisconsin was in rough. They were in rough
Yeah.
shape late in the year for sure.
But
here's
a guy
the thing.
I think would be higher on this list, or maybe should be. Dave Braun is last on this list. 2 years ago, he was Conference Coach of the Year, deservedly so. He was the interim at Northwestern and won Coach of the Year in 2023. That's how. I mean, I think that both speaks to the depth of the coaches here and how fluid these lists can be. They were 8-5 in 2023 after the Pat Fitzgerald,
and he was way up that list. Yeah. Yes. Last thing I want to say about Matt Rule is just that I know year 3 is supposed to be the breakout year. So if he breaks out, I had him 9th. I had Matt Rule 9th, just based on mostly on what he's done in the Big Ten. If they have a good year, he can rise up that list. If they have another bad year, he could fall down the list too. So it'll be, he's got to do better than 6-6 this year. I think they've got a favorable schedule. They have to do that. I also agree with you on David Braun. Having him 18, I think is too low. I had Braun at 15. And like you said,
I would as well, actually. Yeah. And that's maybe even lower than I would like to have him. I would have, like, with these two, the two above him, Foster and Loxley, I would have them as the bottom two. You will not meet many people that comment on coaching who thinks Mike Loxley is a worse head coach than I do. I'm just not a fan. He had 3 decent years at Maryland in a row. They won 7 games, 8 games, and 8 games.
Yeah.
Do you know what his overall record as a head coach is?
I can pull it up, but no, what
35 and 67. He was 2 and 26 in 3 years at New Mexico.
And at Maryland, he's 33 and 41. And I think the big problem, here's the problem with Loxley. 2 things. 1, his teams don't get better. They peak early in the year. They seem to get worse when everyone else gets better. So that's a problem, and it's been a consistent problem. And 2, he needed, with Taulia Tagovailoa, he needed to have a breakthrough year where they won 9 or 10 games.
Yeah.
And it didn't happen. They went 8-5 twice. And because of that, he hasn't been able to recruit. He hadn't been able to recruit the next Taulia Tagovailoa. Now, maybe it's Malik Washington. Maybe it is. But
it could be.
There
We'll
were
get to
a
that
couple.
Next slide.
Yeah, but the Billy Edwards thing obviously didn't go great.
Who will be at Wisconsin now?
I know. Which I have all when we get to quarterbacks. I have all kinds of thoughts.
That'll be an interesting one.
I have all kinds of thoughts about that. I
agree. Also with Loxley, they're typically only beating teams that are worse than they are. They're losing to the good teams, and most of the teams level with them. They're not beating them either. It's the inverse of what you're happening with Kirk Ferentz and Bielema, where you can usually beat those level teams. He's not doing that.
His problem is he doesn't develop the line of scrimmage well enough on either side of the ball.
Well, I think that's very accurate. Yeah.
And that's been true his entire tenure. I think you have Brett Bielema too low. I'll say that. I have Brett Bielema.
This isn't mine. This is
no. I think they. Sorry, not you.
Yeah.
I think USA Today's Paul Meyerberg. Yeah. I think he's got Bielema too low, and I'll say this. I'll say why. Yeah, at Illinois, he's gone 28 and 22, 18 and 18, and Illinois was a dumpster fire before he got there. But before that, at Wisconsin, he went 90. He went if you total both Wisconsin and Illinois together, just Wisconsin, 96 and 46, 55 and 37. So if you put them together, that's really good. And he did a lot at Wisconsin. And the thing that's interesting about Bielema is that he failed at Arkansas, right? And he goes to the NFL for a few years. And then he came back, and when he took the Illinois job, he said that what I did at the NFL, they said, what'd you do in the NFL? He said, I got my PhD in football. He said, I needed to learn the game better. And if you look at him now, he doesn't make in-game mistakes, like like ever. He always does the right thing. He knows when to be aggressive. He knows when to be conservative. And I think from a personal player personnel level, I think he knows when to push people's buttons and when not to. Yes.
He's very good at that.
Yes. And we saw in the bowl game, he can manipulate the other head coach. I mean, he had Shane Beamer so focused on Bielema, I think he forgot about the football game.
Yeah.
you know? So Bielema, and now he's got Illinois humming, and Illinois is traditionally a basketball school.
Yeah.
So to go 10-3, Illinois hadn't won 10 games since 2001. I mean, that's heady stuff.
Yeah, I didn't realize
so,
it was that long.
And now they bring back 16 starters. So I'm curious from your perspective, because I have a little theory about Bielema. I wonder if they do what I think they're going to do and they win 10, 11 games this year. I'm counting the postseason. If they win 10, 11 games, right? Either make the playoff or go like 9-3 and win a good bowl game, right? One of those two things. Does Bielema get a look from like one of your big SEC programs? I mean, you look at the jobs that, I mean, we'll talk about that. We can talk about that when we get to hot seat stuff. But I think
this was a unique year for that, because SEC and Big Ten wise, only Purdue came open. No other head coaching jobs came open.
Yeah, so things are going to be open next year. And I just wonder if people look at Bielema and what he's built at Illinois and think, oh, my man, this guy is it. Because he's still a relatively young man for as experienced as he is.
He's 55. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's got decades of coaching left. You know, good 15, 20 years left for sure. So, yeah.
So for those of you that watched the show last week, Thor Nystrom and I had an off recording conversation about the same topic with Bielema a couple days ago of, does he stay at Illinois for the rest of his career, or is another job in the works? The SEC one is interesting because he failed there once. Right. And you could see it going both ways of, he failed here once, we're not going to hire him, or the other way of, he's clearly matured a lot, and where can he get us now? Which is what Lane Kiffin did. Lane Kiffin matured a lot and has done a lot better now.
Yes.
And I think a lot of it might depend on the job. And if he would want to leave, I don't know that he would want to leave. An interesting.
No, he might want to stay in Champaign forever. He absolutely might. He's got a big extension. No, I'm not saying Bielema's leaving. I'm saying I'm wondering who goes after him if he has a big year. Like, I look at like Oklahoma or something, and I wonder, you know,
Kentucky would be another one.
Yep. Yeah. That would be
an
one.
Interesting one that I thought about, you know, looking at interconference moving, which you're not seeing it as much now with SEC Big Ten, but in his case, the school he is an alumni of is almost certainly going to have a head coaching opening in the next 5 years.
And he's even got a tattoo.
Yeah. Would he leave Illinois to go to Iowa? You would ruffle a lot of feathers doing that. He doesn't strike me as someone that is bothered by people being ruffled, but you also could be leaving a good thing where he's built up a lot of grace too. It's not the easiest move in the world. And Iowa's good enough because of Ferentz. They will not be short of good suitors.
So here's the interesting thing about Iowa. First of all, they'd have to offer a lot of money because Brett Bielema has a clause in his contract to not go to another Big Ten team.
I did not know that. Okay.
So that would be because we just had Big Kurt from Eyes on Big on my podcast, and we just did our Illinois preview. And so there's that. So I say you can get around those things if you have enough money, right?
Yeah.
So that I'm not saying that for sure precludes it. Here's what's interesting about Iowa versus Illinois. Iowa for sure has the better program, the better infrastructure, the better, you know, they're more set up to make you succeed. But Illinois has better in-state recruiting.
Yes.
So what matters to you? Do you know what I mean? So I could see him going either way in that decision, because it's like, do you stay? Do you believe in what you're building at Illinois and like, you know, or do you think, oh, Iowa has more resources for me? Maybe that's the way to go. I don't know. Yeah. It could be really interesting.
Yeah. And the way the power structure has shifted, I don't know if we would see Big Ten or SEC head coaches leave for a lateral job in another college. Like, you're not going to go to the Big 12 or the ACC because of that.
Well, unless you're Jeff Brom.
Yeah, but that's different though. He was an alumni.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah. I mean,
and Louisville is a much better job than Purdue.
It is. Yeah. I mean, I told some of this within the next 3 to 5 years, they will be a playoff team.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Just because all the, with all the conferences getting bids and whatnot, it's going to happen.
And Brom's a great coach, man. He's
very
great.
good. Yeah,
I mean, like what he did at Purdue was almost miraculous. Purdue was a doormat when he got there.
And I did an article about that for Mike Farrell. In basically their last 50 years, the only winning coaches they've had have been him and Joe Tiller. Everybody else has lost there other than those two.
It's a basketball school.
Yeah.
They don't have. So here's the biggest thing. Until they get it figured out, Purdue and Maryland don't have enough NIL to keep their rosters. Okay. Like literally there was a fire sale. Everyone stole from Maryland. Everyone stole from Purdue. We stole from Purdue.
Yep.
I mean, half a dozen Big Ten teams stole from Purdue, and same with Maryland. Until they have more NIL for football, it's going to be hard for them because right now those schools just have a lot more NIL for basketball than football.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, all of Purdue's top, Thieneman was their best player going to Oregon, an in-conference school. Yeah.
Yeah. Thieneman's fantastic.
Yeah. Claire, the tight end, is going to Ohio State.
And the other tight end's going to Minnesota.
Yeah. And that height or health, the edge is going to Clemson. He was a very good player as well.
Yeah. And their punter went to Illinois. I mean, like, they lost everybody.
Okay.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So, enough. One thing before we move on to the next slide, one guy I think eventually will climb up this list. Jedd Fisch did very well at Arizona, but in only 1 year at Washington, they weren't great. Like, I get why he's at where he is on this list. I do think he's a good coach, though, who will have them in a good spot this year and in the future.
So I had Fisch at 10, and it's mostly because he managed to go, win 10 games in year 3 at Arizona.
Yeah.
Jedd Fisch is tough for me because he's been a nomad, and I'm sure you don't know this, but back in the day, he was our offensive coordinator.
I was aware of that.
Oh, you did. Yeah. He ruined. Adam Weber was a second-team all-conference quarterback, and he broke him. He had him throwing tennis balls and doing all these weird things and trying to adjust his throwing motion. And I was like, Adam Weber is second-team all-conference. You don't need to fix him. You just need to coach him. And he tried to fix him, and he broke him. So, but I think Jedd Fisch learned from that, right? He learned he had too big of a playbook. He was asking too much of his quarterback. And, like, he learned from that. And like, I agree with you. For Washington to go 6-6 despite losing 21 starters off the national title runner-up
lost
team,
everybody
is really impressive. And Fisch could sneak up this board this year because he's got, I think, one of the best QB running back wide receiver trios in the conference with QB Damon Williams, running back Jonah Coleman, and wide receiver Denzel Boston. I mean, those guys are great. With Washington, it's are they good enough on the line of scrimmage? Last year they weren't. Are they?
And I was good, and that's why with Fisch at Arizona, we saw them struggle right away, then get better. He built them from the trenches outwards, both O and D line. So they went from 1 win to 5 wins to 10 wins in year 3, because when you're building the trenches, it's going to take longer. You're not going to see those immediate results. I do think he's a guy in the next couple, if Florida struggles this year or next year and Napier is gone, if Jedd Fisch does well, he could be a guy in the mix for that job, being a Gators alumni and former assistant there under Spurrier.
Oh, yeah. Washington fans actually got mad at us last year because we made the Jedd Fisch to Florida joke one too many times.
Okay.
They were like, please stop doing that. And we were finally like, you're right. We shouldn't give your coach a hard time all the time. But he is an alum, so that is obviously a place that, if they considered him, he would definitely consider that job highly. Yeah.
Are we ready to move on to QBs here? Do you have any final coaching parting shots?
Yeah, my last thing I wanted to say is you and I both had PJ Fleck at 7. I think PJ Fleck, it's if you take out his first 2 years and the COVID year, he's been amazing. So what he's built has been really impressive at Minnesota. So I had him where you have him. In the last 5 full seasons, he's had an 11-win season, 3 9+ win seasons, 4 8+ win seasons. That's the most successful run Golden Gopher football has had since the 60s. So
I would waffle. I would have him 7 or 8. For me, I don't know if I would have. I may flip-flop him and Bielema, but
sure.
the 6 above him I would probably have. even though you could make the case Fleck could be ahead of Rule, I think. I don't know that I'd make it, but you could.
I would make that argument, but I have Bielema like 3 also. I have Bielema way up my list because I just think what he's done at both those stops in the Big Ten has been amazing. But I think this is it's always fun to talk coach rankings. It's an evergreen subject. So this is other than that, I think that I agree with a lot of this list.
We'll have one. Who's on the hottest seat in the Big Ten going into this year?
I thought we were talking hot seat later.
We can, or
no, but we can talk now. Either way. All right.
Let's
the
keep
hottest
the
seat
stuff together and talk about it now.
Okay, let's talk about it now. Sure, that's fine. Let's go hot seat stuff. I ranked my hot seat candidates 1 through 5.
Okay.
And at number 1, I have Maryland's Mike Locksley.
Agreed.
And
I'm with you there. Yep.
And it's for what I said before. The 2 8-5 campaigns with Tua weren't enough to get people excited. He's hemorrhaged his best players in the portal. Maryland has an NIL problem. They lost. It's a disaster. And they need to bring in a coach who can raise some NIL above all else. So, I think Locksley is toast. But I also think after he gets fired, Locksley will reemerge next year as one of the most dangerous offensive coordinators in college football.
He could.
Because offensively, he's a genius. Yeah. He really is. Yeah. Do you want me to just go down the list of things, or do you want to go back and forth, or how do you want to do it?
That's we'll go 1 through 1 down. I agree with you on 1. Who do you have it to?
I don't think it's fair, but I have David Braun.
Okay.
And
Northwest. I have Luke Fickell at 2. It's a massive buyout. He's been awful there.
He's been awful. Yeah, we can talk about Fickell first. He's underachieved at Wisconsin. I have him at 4. And last year, the Badgers missed a bowl game for the first time in over 20 years. Yes. Worse yet, it's weird. He's recruited well, but he's struggled to keep guys on the roster, as a lot of guys have transferred. I mean, even guys like he had a quarter or a wide receiver and a tight end who were supposed to be starters for him this year transfer in for spring ball, and after spring they left.
Yeah, Cozio came in from Ball State, is now at Houston after spring ball. Yep.
Yes, and Mark Hamper, the wide receiver.
Yep.
And they both left. And here's a stat for you. From Luke Fickell's first recruiting class, the 2023 class, he's only got 4 guys left.
Ooh, that's rough.
4.
Yeah.
That's attrition. So, Fickell's been a disaster. The only reason I don't have him higher than 4, and Wisconsin has probably the toughest schedule, if not in the country, definitely in the Big Ten.
So I did a show about this with SEC. They're 4th overall, which is the highest in the Big Ten, according to SP+.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would probably rank them even higher than that with my Big Ten bias. I think so. The problem is the buyout, and the buyout is so big that I don't know if Wisconsin can afford to fire Fickell. So that's why I have him 4th. I think they'd have to go like 4. They'd have to go like 4 and 8. Okay. I don't think he even gets fired at 5 and 7.
No. His contract was still 2032. That's the length we're dealing with here. But so I had him 2 just because I think they do have the money if they would really want to pull the trigger.
Yeah. I mean, Wisconsin has resources for sure. I just it's been fun for me because I thought Fickell was going to be a disaster for us at Minnesota. I thought he was going to
when they made the hire, it was a coup that everybody in the country wanted this guy. Like nobody thought
everybody wanted him.
Yeah.
And it's like, I thought he was going to do for them what PJ Fleck has done for us and just elevate the program. But instead they've gone in reverse. And
we thought Luke Fickell was going to be what Dan Lanning has done at Oregon, basically.
Yes. Yeah. And here's what I think the problem is, Mike. It's not that changing the offense was a mistake. What they should have done is done like a Jamie Chadwell kind of option-y run heavy offense. That more like a modernized option that would have been smart for a run heavy team like Wisconsin. But the biggest mistake he made was changing the defense. They were perennially a top 5 or 10 defense. And he didn't even keep the 3-4. He's like, I want 4 guys in the line of scrimmage. We're going to run a 4-2-5 now. And I'm like, why would you take something that's working so well and you broke it?
And an old coordinator there, Phil Longo, who succeeded everywhere, is now Sam Houston's head coach. Couldn't make it work there. I put that more on Fickell than I do on Phil Longo.
Oh, me too.
Yeah.
Me too. And the fact that anytime there's a problem with a coordinator who's been successful previously, I think it's the head coach's fault.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had Fickell at 2. You had I had Braun at 3. Who
Okay.
you had at 2. And
Yeah,
again, it's unfair, but so many coaches on this list are safe. It's you got to come up with guys somewhere.
Well, it's not. So here's the thing. Last year was horrific, and Northwestern did well the year before because they had Ben Bryant for a year, and he was a great quarterback. But last year was horrific. They couldn't do anything offensively. They didn't have a quarterback who was functional. Now they graduated all their best receivers and skill players, so they're gone. And they have Preston Stone, who couldn't at quarterback, who couldn't keep his job at SMU last year and got benched in favor of Kevin Jennings, who is fine but not great.
Yeah.
So like
Stone was a young guy. We thought he'd be good, and he's regressed since then.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing for Northwestern, Mike, is that they have a new stadium opening next year. And my guess is because they have a new stadium opening, they need excitement in the program. They're going to get a new coach with the new stadium. That's my prediction.
That's
Okay.
Take on it. Yeah.
Moving on, I have Lincoln Riley at 3, but I don't think he gets fired. I mean, 6-6, 4-5 in the Big Ten last year at USC.
Yeah.
I mean, that's terrible. And the worst thing is Riley got out coached. I mean, repeatedly.
Yeah. I have Lincoln Riley at 4, but there's a caveat for me because we're talking about a Jimbo Fisher level buyout.
Yes.
Lincoln Riley won't get fired. He will take a lateral job somewhere else, and both sides will, well, I'm not going to take money from you, but I'm not going to pay you to leave. We'll just wash our hands of each other and be good. I think that's the realistic path to Lincoln Riley leaving. It's not getting fired. It's, oh, see you later. I'm taking another job. And, oh, okay, bye.
He doesn't make good in-game decisions. And I think at Oklahoma, you just didn't notice because they had such a big talent advantage compared to the rest of the Big 12. Mm-hmm. But in the Big 10, you play good teams every week. And it's like we saw it when we played them. If USC had realized that they said, okay, we have an offensive line that is bad at pass blocking, but it's good at run blocking, and we have 2 great backs. They should have run the ball.
Yeah.
Like most of the time. But Lincoln Riley won't do that. And they asked PJ Fleck after we beat them last year, after Minnesota beat USC. They asked him, they said, so why were you playing the pass so much? And he said, Lincoln Riley always goes back to the pass. We knew we didn't have to play the run because he would eventually go back to the pass and we would get him then.
Okay.
So
that'll be an interesting game because the beginning of their schedule is pretty favorable this year. There are 2 non-con games, though. Though, interestingly enough, we do have the Clay Helton USC reunion in week 2, and Clay Helton's done quite well at Georgia Southern. But
I know
Purdue's not going to be much better. Michigan State will be out in California. Right. We might learn a lot about USC week 5 when they go to Illinois. That could be an interesting game. Yeah.
Could be an interesting game between 2 highly ranked teams.
Yeah.
And then the only other guy I have on the hot seat is Michigan Sharon Moore.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. 7-5 at Michigan just isn't good enough. And I think, and the fact that Moore genuinely thought that Alex Orji was an effective Big Ten starting quarterback, and he was all in on Orji, and then the guy couldn't play.
He's going to be a backup at a Mountain West school this year. Talk about what we're doing now. Yeah.
And that was a catastrophic misevaluation of talent. So I know it's only been 1 year, but Michigan is not a patient fan base. They never have been. And I think if they have another subpar season, I think they need to win 9 games minimum or he's fired.
If they win, I'm not that.
Unless it's 8 and Bryce Underwood looks good. If it's 8 and Bryce Underwood looks good, then maybe they keep him. But like if he goes 7-5 again, I don't think he keeps his job.
I think with 7 wins, if Underwood shows promise, I think that's it. I think starting a freshman is a calculated move by him in that it extends you because look at our schedule. We started a freshman. What did you expect would happen? So realistically, I think there's only 4 that we could see leaving after this year. The 4 we talked about. I think it would have to get awful for Moore to lose his job, like 4 or 5 wins.
Really?
And I don't think they'll be that bad.
Interesting.
I don't think they'll be that bad.
No, they're not going to be that bad. They're Michigan. They have the talent. Will it be interesting if they go? I hope they go 7-5 because I'm curious. I'm
Yeah.
curious to see what they would do because I don't know. Michigan, I think they pulled the trigger on firing Rich Rod after 3 years. So like they'll pull it early, you know?
Yeah, they certainly could.
Yeah. And then of course, obviously, if something happens off the field, then somebody else could get fired. But
I mean,
nothing's
that's a
gonna
game
happen.
changer for anybody.
Yeah. The only other person is like, let's say Nebraska goes like 4-8 against that schedule. Then I could see Matt Rule getting fired, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Because Dylan
I agree.
Raiola should be better this year, and they should be fine.
Yeah, what Nebraska was last year, that's where Michigan's at this year. I think of starting the highly touted freshman, and it buys you another year in a lot of ways.
Right.
We'll move on to Q. I feel like this list that we showed you pretty good. There's a lot of consensus because we didn't have much turnover with coaches.
Yep.
That's not the case with the QBs. We have a lot of new faces here.
Yeah, we do.
My first impression of this was Fernando Mendoza would be top 3 for me. Way too low here. And I don't know. The Dante Moore at 2. He wasn't good when he started at UCLA 2 years ago in those games. He didn't look like a competent guy to the extent where they went out and got other guys. I get, this whoever made this list, Sleeper did, but because Mendoza was in the ACC there, not rating him where they should have. But I think Mendoza should be a lot higher on this list.
I think Mendoza should be top 5, probably. And I'll tell you who I have number 1, and I think is radically disrespected on this list. Luke Altmaier at Illinois. Are you kidding me? The guy
I'm way lower on him. I'm not a big fan. So I'm lower on him.
Okay, let's go. Yeah. Let's go on this. All right. So
I would have him at 4 or 5, though. I certainly would have him higher than where he is. Not in that top 2 or 3, though.
So here's what I'll say about him. Over 2,700 yards passing, 61% completion, 7.8 yards per attempt, 22 TDs, just 6 interceptions. He's the biggest reason why Illinois won 10 games last year. I know they lost their star receivers to graduation, but they have a veteran offense with a senior-laden O-line and tight end group, veteran backs. I think Altmaier's poised to do big things as long as they get 1 or 2 guys to step up at receiver. And he's so much more athletic than you think he is. And he can get to when the pocket breaks down, he can get to the edge and get you scramble for a first down. And yeah, I think Altmaier's great. I think he's massively disrespected on this list.
I would have him 3rd, which is higher than this, but not as much. So I would go Alar Mendoza and then Altmaier at 3.
Yeah, I had Drew Aller at 2. Aller's fantastic. I mean, 67% completions, over 3,300 yards, 8.4 yards per attempt, 24 TDs to just 8 picks, and 3 of those were against USC.
Yeah.
The only knock on Aller is that he has not been a good deep ball thrower.
No, he is not.
He misses guys who are open routinely way downfield. He's really good in the short and intermediate game. He needs to show that he can throw a little bit deep balls a little better, and hopefully, Penn State's upgrades at wide receiver will make it easier to throw the ball down.
Yeah, I mean, getting Ross, getting Trevor Pena, very good targets for them to add.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And they needed to, because for whatever reason, James Franklin used to turn out an NFL receiver every year. And it's been a while since he's developed.
Their receivers against Notre Dame last year had 0 catches in that game.
0 catches. I mean, that's abysmal. Yeah.
And talking about just all the new faces and fluidity of this list, if we look at the right column, Nico, Gronowski, Maeva, and Preston Stone, there's a scenario that all 4 of them could be on the left side by the end of the year.
Preston Stone? You think so?
He could be in the top half by the end of the year, certainly.
I mean, I just don't think
you look at the guys that could,
receivers.
But you look at Underwood could go to the other side.
Yep.
Childs would. I was a massive Childs fan when they got him when he came over, with Jonathan Smith. He was not good last year.
No.
Childs really struggled.
13 TVs to 11 interceptions.
Yeah. But if you look at if that many guys could move over, you have to have the same number of guys moving from right to left. So,
sure. No, you're right. Childs that's a good point. The thing about Childs, he's got a cannon. He throws a nice deep ball.
Yeah.
But he doesn't throw with any touch. He rockets everything.
Yeah.
You know who he reminds me of a lot, actually? Ethan Kaliakmanis.
Okay.
And it's because he
yeah.
throws the ball 100 miles an hour and doesn't
Yeah.
know how to like take something off it. He doesn't have an off-speed pitch. It's all just rocket. And that makes it hard on your wide receivers when you throw the ball that hard at them.
Absolutely.
These aren't NFL
Yeah.
receivers. Like you want to throw a catchable ball. That's important.
Yeah.
And but Childs, man, if he can cut down the turnovers with the athleticism, I don't know. I think Childs is overrated, but my podcast partner, Norwegian Gopher, John, he loves Aiden Childs. He thinks he's going to turn the corner and be a top 5 Big Ten quarterback this year. So I'm curious. I have kind of a bet with him. I think Childs is going to suck, and he thinks he's going to be great. So we're going to find out.
Okay. Yeah, an interesting one here. One of the biggest talking points of the offseason spring has been Nico leaving Tennessee.
Yeah,
he took a bad rap for the way things went down, which both sides made a lot of mistakes there. Mm-hmm. We're also talking about a guy who was a redshirt freshman that took his team to the playoffs.
Yeah.
And there were probably unrealistic expectations. I think people expected too much out of him this year.
Well, they saw him in that bowl game against Iowa, and they thought it was going to be like that every week.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, Dylan Sampson was the best running back in the SEC last year. They had the best run defense in America last year, Tennessee. So that largely got them to the playoffs. Yep. But Nico didn't put many feet running there. He was very good as a redshirt freshman. In one of the offenses, it's very QB friendly. Heupel's a fantastic coach. But there's certainly potential Nico ends up a lot higher than 10 on this list come end of the season.
Possibly.
That team's going to be bad, though. I don't think UCLA has a good roster.
No, I don't think they have a great roster. And also, he doesn't have much time to get acclimated.
No.
Like, they went through all of spring ball thinking Joey Aguilar was going to be their quarterback. And Joey Aguilar was getting really good reviews. So it'll be interesting. I think this is a big risk for Deshaun Foster.
Yeah.
Because if it doesn't work out, then I think it calls his whole tenure into question. So it'll be interesting.
And I mean, in coaching being one of my focuses, I was not a fan of that hire from the get-go. But obviously, I'm not going to say I'm rooting for anybody to get fired either. That'd be I would say one more thing. I did like them getting Tino Sunseri as their new O coordinator, bringing in a guy from Indiana we were praising Cignetti before. They got a guy from his crew to be their new O coordinator at UCLA.
Yeah, no, I think that was a really good hire as well, and it'll be interesting to see what he does. Maybe he can simplify things so it's easier to pick up the offense, at least early in the season. That'll be fascinating to watch. The one thing I'll say about Deshaun Foster is his team didn't quit on him ever last year.
No.
They started 1-5 and ended the season 4-2. And, we went out there and played them out there, and I thought we were just going to roll them, and they gave us an actual fight. So, I will say his guys, I don't think Deshaun Foster may be successful at UCLA because it seems like he can get guys to buy in.
And in two of their bigger rivals, they played USC and Washington in their second and third to last games of the year. Both those teams were more talented than UCLA, and UCLA beat both of them. So I think that goes a long ways towards saying they did fight the whole season. Yeah.
The thing that's hard about UCLA,
they lost to those two, but they were bad.
Right. Yeah, exactly. The thing that's hard about UCLA is I got to be honest, man. When we were there, our fans were making as much noise as theirs. I mean, we had 10 or 15,000 fans there, and everyone wants to go to LA, and they don't have a great home crowd. And I just think that these Big Ten teams keep showing up with all their fans. Yeah. To UCLA, and that's got to be hard. Like, you don't have a real home field advantage like other schools do.
Yeah, it's another talk. Then this is probably a couple months ago. I was talking about with, home advantages and home, ideal places to go. Then it got to the topic of who has the worst setup. The Rose Bowl is one of the best, maybe the best bowl game in the country. It's maybe the worst home stadium for a P4 team in the country. It's so
far from campus.
Exactly.
It's like Miami's. Yeah. It's like Miami's stadium.
Yeah.
It's nobody goes to their games because it's so far away.
And as Minnesotans, we understand that the Metrodome was not a good home stadium for the Gophers for a long time.
It destroyed the program. Yeah. Destroyed the program.
And that's only a few miles. We're talking like 3 times the distance for UCLA to get to the Rose Bowl.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's
What do
just,
you?
and their
Yeah.
in-game experience isn't very good. They have to
No.
they got to do a lot of stuff at UCLA to fix it.
How do you feel about? I think Julian Sain is too high on this list because there's so many unknowns there, and not only are there unknowns, we're expecting so much out of a freshman here, who is just redshirted the 1 year. So certainly he's talented. I don't think I would have. I wouldn't have him this high on the list.
I would, and it's just because I watched the spring game and I came out a believer.
Okay.
And I just think when you've got the talent he has at receiver and the coaching they have, I think, Hartline's the OC, but that offense is Ryan Day's baby.
Yeah.
And they're going to scheme stuff up. They're going to scheme guys open. They're going to make it easy for him to read it earlier in the year while he gets acclimated. I don't know. Maybe I'm going to eat crow here, but I'm a big Julian Sain believer.
I do think largely because of Dave, they will put him in spots where he's not going to turn the ball over anyway.
Yeah, for sure.
Would you have him ahead of Damon Williams or not? I think that's an interesting question.
It's tough because Damon Williams, again, we only saw him play a little bit.
Yep.
And what I saw, I really liked. But we only saw him play a little bit. I don't know what either of those guys going to look like week to week. It's what makes it tough to project.
Yeah. I think that's fair. I'm also very curious to see Mark Gronowski coming down. He was a massive FCS player at South Dakota State, one of the best programs there.
Yeah,
certainly had options to go to. There were a lot of P4 schools he could have went to. I think Iowa was a wise choice for him, and you have Warren Ruggiero coming in from Wake Forest now to help out there. Hawkeyes are an interesting team this year on offense. They've always been good on D. We know on D and special teams are going to be good. They're interesting on offense this year. Yeah,
I'm worried. They don't have Caleb Johnson, so they're going to have to throw the ball better because they don't have a running back. They don't have yes, Moulton's good, but he's not Caleb Johnson. You could gear your whole defense to stop him and still fail. And they don't have a back like that this year. They have very good backs, but not that elite top. I think Caleb Johnson was the second or third best running back in college football last year.
Absolutely second or third. Yeah.
So it's going to be different. I'm still really questionable about what they have at receiver. It just doesn't look very good. I don't think Vander Zee is that great. The transfers, maybe they work out. I don't know. I still think it's been a long time since they had Marvin McNutt, man. It's been a long time since Ferentz had a legit receiver who scared you.
Yeah. An interesting portal. They got the FCS guy, Sam Phillips from Tennessee Chattanooga.
Right.
I've heard good things. I mean, nobody was watching UT Chattanooga games last year. In spring, they said he looked pretty good though too. So
Iowa said their receivers look good a lot, and then it turns out they don't. So I don't believe until I see it. I just don't believe them anymore.
Okay,
because they've done this for a few years in a row. They're like, we're gonna be improved at receiver. Or this transfer is gonna show up. This guy's gonna show out, and it hasn't happened. So I mean, it's if it does work out, if the offense is improved, the receiver play is good, then give Tim Lester his flowers.
Yeah.
Because but until I see it, I'm just gonna believe that Iowa's gonna be more of a running team again.
Yeah.
That
and
passes,
they'll throw
to their tight ends.
Yeah. And they'll still win 9 games because they always win.
Of course they will, because their special teams are better than yours. Their special teams are better than yours, and it doesn't matter who they're playing. They have the best special teams, and they win a lot of games that way.
They've had 2 coaches since the late 70s. That is remarkable consistency.
It's insane, and it is a testament to what they built. Yeah, they built an absolute machine in Iowa City. It'll be, it's funny. Some Hawkeye fans are sick of Kirk Ferentz, but man, I will be standing up and cheering when he retires.
Oh, 100%.
He has been a thorn in my side.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Before we move on, can I just say that I think it's fair to rank him 15 because he's a redshirt Frosh who has barely played.
I was just gonna say, tell people out there what they should know about Drake Lindsey.
Okay. Drake Lindsey, I've watched several practices now, right? So I've seen him up close. He has the strongest arm I have ever seen in a Gopher quarterback. He throws an effortless deep ball, and he can howitzer it into, tight spaces. And there was a play this spring when I was at practice where somebody came unblocked, right? Like it was a
Yeah.
missed assignment. Somebody came unblocked. I think the running back read the protection wrong or something. And Drake did this. He jumped backwards. So he was at like a 45-degree angle going backwards and tried to throw it over the middle. And I'm like, oh, that's getting picked off. Nope. Got it there. And I don't like on a rope.
Yeah.
So Drake Lindsay has a huge arm, like an arm like I haven't seen. I'm really excited about the Drake Lindsay era. I'm not saying he's going to be amazing in year one, but like I think over the next few years he's going to become one of the best quarterbacks in the Big Ten.
Yeah, he's one of those guys for me. Like I need to see him prove it before. Same with Singleton, Malik Washington, and like all these guys over there. I need to see him prove it before I would rate him too much higher.
Yeah. So I've got a quarterback prediction for you.
Okay.
I predict that before the season is over, at about the halfway point, we see Lincoln Riley for the second year in a row bench a quarterback, because I don't believe that Miller Moss was the problem. I think Jaden Maeva is a turnover machine who doesn't read defenses well. And I think he's going to be a disaster this year, and they're going to turn to the freshman Hassan Longstreet. And that Lincoln Riley is going to try to buy himself another year by once again turning to a young quarterback.
That'll be it, because Maeva was good at UNLV when he started 2 years ago. So the sample we've seen of him is, I think, promising. He has turned the ball over a lot, though. That you brought up a very good point there. Yeah.
Yeah, no, he's got skills. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But Lincoln Riley is quick to throw his quarterbacks under the bus if they're not Heisman level. And I just think that, he might, if he loses a couple games and starts to worry about his job security, he might think he can once again go to a freshman quarterback to buy himself some more time.
Certainly, I think that's a realistic. And then I think that brings us to another point next offseason where if Maeva doesn't do well, they're not sure, do they go in the portal and get a proven guy? But then you burn both of those bridges. There's a lot of work parts to that. So,
I mean, I think Riley better hope that either Maeva or Longstreet's the answer, because otherwise it's going to be tough. I do think it's going to be hard for him to hold on to his job if he keeps missing like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the last guy I'll mention here, the growth we see out of Dylan Raiola is going to go a long ways towards how good this Nebraska team will be in 2025. I think they're definitely making improvements, but we got to see more out of him. And maybe I'm being harsh by saying that because he was a young guy that got thrown to the wolves right away. We got to see that manageable growth, though.
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to see the growth because I don't believe in Nebraska's running backs. I don't think they have. I think they are very average. I don't think they're bad. I think they're very average. And if you have a very average, at this level, if your running backs are just average, your receivers better be something else.
Yeah. And they're not, and their receivers are not. Yeah.
So it's going to be on, what I'm saying is a lot's going to be on Raiola. Yeah. The one thing he has going for him, though, he's had a whole offseason to work with Dana Holgerson.
Yes.
And Dana Holgerson is, you say he's not, I've heard he's not a nice guy, but
I met him. I actually met him. He was all right. Yeah. When I was a grad assistant, we played against him when he was at Houston. Granted, we're talking about a minute conversation before a game. He was fine to talk to then.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think a lot of it's going to come down to Holgerson and whether he can scheme guys open for Raiola.
Yeah. That was the Kevin Sumlin, Holgerson, Cliff Kingsbury staff with Case Keenum as the QB was that squad. So
wow.
Yeah. But
Case Keenum, man, he put up video game numbers.
Oh, why? It was absolutely wild. We'll move on to our third, prominent topic of playoff projections. So this is just one person's on here, and not necessarily who's going to win it, but I thought this visual was good at just talking about the 12 teams, who will be in. So my hot take, in talking, one of the, topics articles I saw recently was new teams to be in the playoff. I don't think a new Big Ten team makes the playoffs next year. I think Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon make it. They might only get 3 next year. I don't know that a new team, if a new team makes it, probably Illinois, maybe Iowa, but I don't see a new team in the Big Ten making the playoffs next year.
If it happens, I think it's Illinois. They have a favorable schedule.
They do.
Really, the only game that I think they won't be favored in, well, maybe 2 games. I mean, or at least not won't be favored in, but the only game in which they're going to be a significant underdog at all is against Ohio State.
Okay.
So you assume they drop that. Other than that, they have a really favorable schedule. They miss a lot of, they miss a lot of the teams, who are very competitive in the upper middle class of the Big Ten. And they get a lot of those teams that are kind of struggling towards the bottom. So
at Indiana will be a chore, and that's early season too.
Well, they have at Indiana, here's the games that are going to decide the season for Illinois, right? You've got at Indiana, you've got USC, and you've got at Duke. If you win those 3 games, the schedule opens up beautifully.
And I was even the at Duke will be interesting because I believe it's week 2. At Washington could be tricky if Washington is playing well later in the season with the skill guys like you talked about.
I agree with you, but they get 2 weeks to get ready for Washington.
I didn't know. Okay. I didn't know when the buys fell for them. Okay.
Yeah. So I think the fact that they have a bye before Washington is huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I agree with you. I mean, it's, I'm bullish on Illinois. I think there's a decent chance they make the playoff. I'm not guaranteeing it or anything, but if Illinois doesn't make the playoff, then I think you're right. Then I think it's Oregon and it's Ohio State and it's Penn State. Cause I need to see Michigan be better before I'm going to believe they're better. I don't believe in USC.
No.
Iowa is Iowa. I think they're very good, but I don't think they have that high ceiling right now.
So so much of that would depend on if Gronowski plays well, I think. Like I did an article last week and it was teams that could, dark horses to win the conference basically. And it was talked about Illinois and Iowa. And for me, they're neck and neck. But for a reason you mentioned, Illinois' schedule is definitely more favorable than Iowa's. So
yes. And also
it could go either way there, but yeah.
I just watched at Minnesota a guy who was a superstar FCS quarterback come to the Big Ten last year. Yeah. And here's what I'm going to say. It took about a month for him to fully adjust. And the question is, for Gronowski, how quickly does he adjust? Because that Cyhawk game is always early. And Iowa State has been beat them last year when, pretty much broke their playoff dreams last year because Iowa was they had a really favorable schedule, was a trendy playoff pick.
Yeah.
And, they kind of losing that Cyhawk kind of sent their season the wrong direction.
Yeah,
so
it is week 2.
So I wonder what Gronowski is going to look like against Iowa State.
Yeah. Week 2. It is week 2 and it is at Iowa State this year.
Yep. Yeah. So that's my only question is what does he look like in September? Because I think he's a good quarterback and I think he'll get there. But I like I said, I question Iowa's receivers.
Yeah, I think that's fair. They also have another early season game against Indiana, who will be frisky again. So,
yeah, no, I think the winner of the Indiana-Illinois game will become the kind of darling of the Big Ten, the team that's not a helmet school but looks like it's going to have a big season kind of thing.
Yeah, that very good point there. That last week of September definitely could be the case there.
Yeah,
who do you think? So. Outside of, we'll branch out from the Big Ten now. What other teams do you look at to be playoff contenders this year, or who may have not been, or teams that you think are locks to make it? Any way we want to go with this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be the usual suspects. I think Texas and Georgia are going to be really tough again. Yeah. I think it's going to be hard. I mean, I don't know enough about the Georgia quarterback. I don't think it's a guarantee he's good enough, but I don't know. The way they recruit everywhere else is just
they will be good enough on both sides of the trenches and on defense to be salty, though. We know that.
It's they're in that top tier. Obviously, So obviously Georgia, obviously Texas. My question is who is Arch Manning really? Who is he?
We don't know. Yeah.
And I'm excited. I'm really excited to find out if he is who they think he is. then Texas is, going to have a really good shot to win a national title.
They are another team. Both sides of their line are really good, and they have very good running backs. They will run the ball extremely well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And, oh, man, the thing about Sarkisian is just the sheer number of screens in his offense. I mean, that guy runs more screens. Not since Gary Pinkel at Mizzou has anyone thrown as many screens as Sarkisian throws.
Great
and with the athletes they have, they're all dangerous.
Yes.
They're all plays that could go for touchdowns. We saw them almost break one off against Ohio State. I think somebody made like a diving tackle, but they nearly scored on one of those in that playoff game.
The Gamecock in me hates to say this.
Sure.
I think Clemson is almost a lock to make the playoffs. They're going to be really good this year.
Yeah. Clemson looks really good. They're better at receiver again. Cade Klubnik's finally coming into his own. They got Tom Allen to run their defense, which Tom Allen is a fantastic defensive coordinator.
I think out of I had someone like raise an eyebrow when I said this before, but then I explained it. Out of all the teams in the country, I think Clemson has the best odds to make the playoffs. Looking at the conference dynamics, like they're easily going to win 10 games. That's going to get you in the playoffs. Their schedule, like they're going to be favored in probably all 12 games. They do play LSU in the opener, but it's at home, and I think they'll be favored in that game. So they might be favored to win every game. But the path to the playoffs.
If Brian Kelly loses that game, if Brian Kelly loses that Clemson game, oh boy, he might be on shaky footing. Speaking of hot seat,
it'll be interesting, and I know a lot of the SEC people, even the people that don't like him, they're very bullish on LSU and have become even more bullish this spring. Like they think they're going to be pretty good. And
Nussmeier's great. Nussmeier's great.
Yeah.
He's got he's like Nussmeier is kind of the quarterback I want Drew Aller to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's fair. And if you talking about that though, like I'm not saying it's a good chance, but there's a realistic chance LSU starts 1-2 because you have Clemson, and then in week 3 you have Florida. Things could get ugly there if that's the case.
Oh yeah, and then that job could be open for sure. It's wild. I mean, I like to see Brian Kelly on the hot seat because I think he's a terrible person for reasons I don't need to talk about on the podcast. Yeah. I'm sure we all know.
You're person-wise, you're absolutely right. One thing I've said before, because of how unlikable he is, people detract him from being a really good football coach, though, which he is.
But he's a great coach. He's coach.
He's unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, what he did at Grand Valley State, what he did at Notre Dame. Notre Dame was a punchline for like 15 years before he came, and built them back into a national power again.
This projection picked Iowa State to win the Big 12. We don't know who's going to win that conference. It's the most wide open. There's 10 teams that could win that conference this year. And
I mean,
the odds support that. I'm looking at the odds from top to bottom. Everybody's like plus 2,000 to win that conference. We don't know.
It's crazy.
If I was betting, tough not to pick an Arizona State repeat. They're going to be good again. Kansas State's going to be salty again. Kleiman just hasn't playing well. Very consistent. Good.
Kleiman's a great coach.
Yeah.
He's a guy. I wonder if Ferentz retires, if that's not the way Iowa goes. He seems like an Iowa guy.
So that a guy, talking about one of my buddies mentioned Thor Nystrom before, Iowa graduate, and we talked about that. You have a few alumni. Kleiman could be a guy. Bielema was an alumni there. Mark Stoops is also an alumni there if he would leave Kentucky. Right. And another G5 guy who I think could be in the mix, former Hawkeye assistant, Jay Norvell at Colorado State could be in the mix.
Oh, yeah. Good call. Yeah.
So,
you forget
speaking
about
of that, do you have any who will the G5 representative be in the playoffs?
I mean, it seems like it's going to be Boise State again based on the hype, but maybe here's what I think though. Could it be Tulane?
Could be.
And and also, what another reason I think David Braun is getting fired, because his first game, Northwestern's first game this year, Mike, is
Yeah.
at Tulane.
Yeah.
It's not even a home game.
It's not. No.
They're going on the road to Tulane. And I'm just
Yeah.
thinking, man, you must want your football coach fired when you schedule like that.
Who knows? Yeah. And do you know, was that schedule? I know it was a multi-year one, I'm assuming, but I wonder if they scheduled this one on the road, knowing they would not be at their permanent stadium yet. Has to be the reason why.
I would assume so, because otherwise it doesn't make any sense to me.
No, it doesn't.
And I still think it's a really bad choice. And I think David Braun is going to have a really good career. I just don't think it's going to be at Northwestern.
Yeah. And Boise, to me, there's a lot of unknowns around Boise. Madsen was an okay QB, but in the modern recent era, they had the best G5 player ever. They lost him now. And in my Mountain West head coach ratings that came out today, I had said, in talking about Spencer Danielson, Gene Chizik was a really good head coach when he had Cam Newton.
Right.
What's Spencer Danielson going to be like when he doesn't have Ashton Jeanty? We don't know yet. So
no, you're right.
I need to see more out of them without Jeanty before. And UNLV is going to be pretty solid with Dan Mullen there, too.
Oh, yeah.
So
UNLV is going to be great. They're not going to, I don't think they're going to miss a beat with Dan Mullen.
Another team who, and their non-con schedule could be tougher, but a team I expect out of the Sun Belt to be good, James Madison. Chesney was really good coming over there and replacing Signetti. And now he's reunited with his QB Sluka, who's coming back with him from UNLV. JMU is going to be pretty solid.
Yeah. I think James Madison, what they've built is so impressive.
Yeah.
And they're going to be, I feel like they're going to be tough every year until proven otherwise. I have a question. Maybe it's just because they were good for so long, but I wonder, is Fresno State going to reemerge as a big contender? I feel like that's such a good job. You get so many power conference transfers who come home who are still talented guys to play there. And I just wonder.
Matt Entz was a fantastic coach at the FCS level, won 2 national titles at NDSU.
Yeah. I'm from Fargo, so I know all about Entz.
Their QB is going to be EJ Warner this year, formerly at Rice, Kurt Warner's boy. Very good QB. So, and it was at Temple before that. Very bullish on him. So, and they've had success. Pat Hill and Jeff Tedford both were very good head coaches there.
Great coaches. Yeah. Great coaches. So I think Fresno State is a team that could reemmerge if things break right for them.
I don't know about this year though. It might take a little while.
No, you're right. Yeah. I guess it's more of a projection with them. It might be a build.
Yeah. But, and another, coming out of CUSA, it's tough because the rest of that conference is down. You probably have to be 12 or 13-0 to make it out of Conference USA. Both Liberty and Western Kentucky are going to be really good teams, though.
Right.
Part of that is you're going to whip up on a lot of your conference, but those two, not only this year, those two teams aren't going away, though. They're consistently going to be good. Both.
No, they are. I can't stand Liberty. I love cheering against them.
I think Chadwell's a stud coach, so I think
he's such a. How does he not have a better job yet? Dude, he's another one, man. If I'm a power running team, conference team, and I need a new coach, I would be looking at Jamie Chadwell. His offense is what a modern running offense should be, Yeah.
And they were down a little last year comparative to, we expected they'd be 11 wins contending for the playoffs. They were down a little, but if I'm an ACC or a team out in that direction, he'd be a guy I would be looking at for sure. I had wondered if the whole Belichick thing didn't play out as it did with North Carolina, if he would have been a guy that the Tar Heels would have looked at. Could have made
Maybe
sense.
They still will. There are still odds that Belichick won't make it to game one.
Yes.
So
absolutely.
You can take money on that.
Yeah.
I thought, man, the Belichick hire, that's wild. I'm so disappointed. So Mike, here's how annoyed I am. We did a home and home with Colorado, and then they hired Dion the next year. We did a home and home with North Carolina, and then they hire Belichick the next year. We were so close to playing those. I really wanted to play against either Dion or Belichick. That would have been fun.
That would have been definitely would have brought some excitement.
Yeah.
But as far as other playoff stuff, I don't know. It'll be one thing I think that'll be interesting will be between ACC and Big 12. ACC got 2 teams last year. Big 12 just got one. That easily could flip. I think
Yeah.
it will become the norm for your P4 conferences to get at least 2 teams in the playoffs. So maybe the Big 12 gets back to 2 this year, but who knows if the ACC loses out and just gets 1. I think Clemson's almost a lock, so you'd think SMU, Miami, Louisville all might have a shot.
I think I like Miami and Louisville a lot. If Carson Beck is good enough, because
and I don't know Miami, that he will be. Yeah.
But here's what I think. Miami plucked our defensive coordinator, Corey Heatherman.
Yeah.
Heatherman is a genius, man.
Very good coach.
He can't recruit. He can't recruit to save his life. We are actually glad it's one of those things where it's probably best for both sides that he left because he couldn't recruit. But I was just on a podcast with some Miami fans on the College Football Express.
Awesome.
And they were they're Miami fans, and they think they have the players. They think they have the players. They just need a guy who can put them in the right places. So if the Miami defense is better, then maybe Miami is a contender for the playoff.
Yeah, one of my articles, top 5 defensive coordinator hires, and he was on there. I think he was a very good addition for them. So
yeah,
that's a good.
So move. I think Miami's interesting. You said Louisville. I think Miller Moss is going to go off. I don't think he was the problem at USC. I think Miller Moss is a very good quarterback. I think Jeff Brom is going to have him at the very, ranked in the top of the country for passing in all the passing categories. Like, I really believe that.
One of the guys I had on last week in the first episode, he was lower on Mike. He's a Southern Cal guy that's better on Moss for a bit. He said the arm strength worries him too much. So we'll see.
Maybe, I don't know, man. I don't know if you need to have the strongest arm.
You might not. In that
like, you need to be. Kellen Moore didn't have a strong arm, but he was accurate at all. Get out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I look at Minnesota quarterbacks. Tanner Morgan didn't have a strong arm, but he put the ball in places. Yeah. Like, I think if you have receivers who can go up and make plays, then it doesn't matter as much if you have a strong arm. If you have those guys who can win those contested catches.
I think there's a lot of validity to that too.
But I don't know as we go down this list of projected playoff teams. Let's go back to your SEC. What am I supposed to think about Texas A&M? Because I don't know what to think about them. Are they a real contender? Are they real for real?
I think they might be another year away. Elko's a heck of a coach, and a lot of the MO and buzz we're hearing on them, even from other teams in the SEC, are they're going to be very physical on both sides of the line. It might take a year or two, but that does show you're building a culture if you're doing that.
Yeah.
LSU, I think A&M will, there's stuff to be seen. My Gamecocks are generating a lot of buzz.
Yeah, they are.
I need to see more out of Sellers in being able to throw effect. The teams that shut down him running, those are the teams that beat the Gamecocks last year.
Right.
But they got potential. LSU and Ole Miss, if Austin Simmons plays well, they certainly could be a playoff team. They're going to have a lot of talent all over the field.
What is South Carolina? I haven't looked at their roster in depth. Do they have all those great D linemen back, or did most of them?
Dylan Stewart is back, who was the best one. Kennard's in the NFL now, but Stewart,
that's a big deal to have him back.
Absolutely. I mean, he's one of the premier edge rushers in the country.
Yeah,
very good player. So
that's exciting.
And they should be better on the O-line, I think.
It's tough that South Carolina has to play Clemson out of conference every year. That's tough.
It is. Yeah.
It was. Man, I had as long as your Gamecocks. Oh, can I ask you about an off-topic subject? Do we have time?
Sure, and I was just let me add one quick thing.
Go ahead.
Not only do they play Clemson out, but their season openers at Virginia Tech too. So they're playing 2 tough out-of-conference games.
Ooh, yeah, that's rough. Yeah, that's intense.
Please go off topic. Yeah, whatever. That's kind of how we were going to end, was with whatever you wanted to ballpark with. And
well, okay. I want to say then, back in the day when Steve Spurrier was at South Carolina, they infamously won the SEC East one year. And then I think it was the bowl game was just a disaster. I want to say against Florida State. Or maybe not. I forget who they played.
I know.
They played a bowl game.
I know, because that year they lost in the SEC title game.
Yep.
Because that was when they played. That was the Cam Newton year at Auburn when they lost to Auburn.
And then they got crushed. And then they got crushed in the bowl game. And Steven Garcia looked terrible. And the rumor I heard is that they caught Steven Garcia, former Gamecocks quarterback, in a room with alcohol and a bunch of co-eds in various states of undress. And that Spurrier, allegedly, according to the rumor I heard, woke everybody up and made Garcia run sprints in the middle of the night. I don't know if that's true, but I heard. Have you ever heard that rumor?
No, they did lose to Florida State in the bowl game that year. One thing that story, never heard anything about it.
Okay.
The one thing I did hear, and this is from guys that were professors there and have been since the 90s who were around, and from early in his time on campus, there were there were legal issues that did come up. Sure. Supposedly he, to some level, matured to the level that he wasn't doing those things anymore. But they did say early on there were problems with him that popped up.
I loved him, man. He was such an entertaining quarterback. I love those Spurrier South Carolina teams. That was a fun era.
He's the only guy that's the winningest head coach at two different SEC schools, at Florida and South Carolina. He's the winningest head coach at both of them.
That's amazing, man.
So, yeah.
I sometimes wonder, I'm glad, obviously, for your sake, it's good he went to South Carolina, but I sometimes wonder if he had gone to North Carolina instead, if he would have won a bunch more, because, again, in the ACC, you know what I mean?
Interesting.
Because those jobs were both open around the same time.
They were.
And he went with South Carolina. And I always wondered if he had gone to North Carolina, would he have won a national title?
And that also
the SEC, it was so hard to get through the SEC when he was going through.
And that coincided with Clemson's resurgence, as Dabo took that job.
Right.
Does it alter that? And also, if the North Carolina job wasn't open, does Mac Brown come back as a head coach at all?
Yeah.
He'd been out of coaching. There's several sliding glass doors that are affected if Spurrier would have went to North Carolina instead. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that was a fun era for sure.
But any final topics you want to touch on or tell people about before we adjourn here?
I mean, this has been really fun. Thanks for having me on. I guess I got to ask, from your perspective, I do have something I want to bring up. From your perspective, from our perspective at my podcast, we think it's ridiculous that the SEC won't go to 9 conference games. We think it's absurd. We think it's unfair. And the ACC too. We feel like there should be a uniform standard if we're trying to compare. It's hard. It's already so hard to compare schedules in a sport that only has 12 regular season games and limited sample size and not playing the same opponents and all that kind of stuff. So what's from your perspective, what do you want to see? Do you want to see the SEC go to 9 conference games or not?
I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other towards it. Maybe I'm in the minority there. My rebuttal to what you said would be, the Big Ten is in the minority with 9. Why should everybody conform to the minority?
It's half and half. The Big 12 has 9 too.
Yeah, but I was counting all 9 of the most of the D5s,
not just the major conferences.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure. Okay.
And but I don't have a strong feeling either way. I don't know it.
The SEC had 5 teams tied for second last year, and that just seemed ridiculous to me. That's my problem with it. How do you differentiate? When the teams don't play each other and then they all have the same record.
Yeah, and that going into the final game, that tiebreaker was because Texas A&M was a game to go to the conference title game.
Right.
A&M was tied, but they held the tiebreaker over some teams. But because A&M lost, they dropped to 3rd or 4th. So I get what you're saying. I will say, for me, it's one of those. I don't have strong feelings one way or the other. Both sides make sense. It's nice to see your schools play out of conference teams. Now, maybe you could alter that. So, with the SEC teams, you're going to play an FCS game. And you're usually going to play 2 G5 teams that will be non-competitive games. So you're probably only having 1 competitive game out of 4 in those non-con games. That could change. We could make them be more competitive games.
Sure.
we could do, and this came up on the SEC After Dark, in the past few weeks, but could there be an early season, like the ACC Big Ten Challenge in basketball? Could we do an SEC Big Ten football challenge where you play a non-con game early in the season? Everybody does it on the same weekend. That could be a good idea. A lot of people would watch that on TV.
Oh, everyone would watch it. I don't love it because I like the schools having scheduling autonomy. Because if you look at the schools who are rebuilding, I feel
agree.
like they need to be able to schedule themselves wins so that they can get their fans excited and actually make a bowl game and stuff like that. So I don't like it. Because if you look at the Big Ten teams already playing 9 conference games, if you mandate another conference game or a non-conference game against the SEC, then then there aren't going to be any games with the ACC or the Big 12.
Are we helping Barry Odom rebuild Purdue if you're forcing him to play an SEC school? No.
No.
Yeah.
No, you're not.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
we're not helping Kentucky and Mississippi State get to bowl games by making them play a Big Ten team. It goes both ways. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't love that idea. I like having as many good out of conference games as you can, but I don't love having it mandated and having it come from up above instead of the schools making the decisions. I was something else I was going to ask you. I just lost my train of thought. I'm so mad at myself. I can't.
I also, another one I waffle on is the model for the playoffs. We're going to move to 16 teams. I think that's inevitable. Yes. But
yeah, unfortunately,
is it going to be a 4-4-2-2-1 model? Probably. I don't know if that's right.
The SEC wants 5+11 though, and they're so.
And I think 5. I think 11. I think keeping the number of at-larges as high as possible is the way to go. But
so I was with you, and then we're talking to a friend of the pod, Big Ten Ted, and he made an interesting point that was like, if you have the automatic bids, then you're going to get way better out of conference games.
Yeah. So it's on our SEC. Stephen Wellasuda is locked on Ole Miss and an After Dark guy. That is exactly what he said. And he also said, to your previous topic, if you have the locked in bids, that's where you could see the SEC going to 9 conference games.
Right. If they're automatically going to get those teams in no matter what.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was initially opposed to the auto bids, but I do also like good non-conference games. So I don't know. I'm not sure what I think the best. I'm not sure what I think the best method is. I do think if you're going to go to 5+11, the SEC has to go to 9 conference games, because otherwise the rankings are going to be too inflated from having, for the league. Because let's just math. The league's going to have 8 fewer losses, because it's one full conference game.
Yeah.
So I would like to see, if we're going to be 5+11, then I want to see the SEC playing 9 conference games.
You could also say playing 9 conference games, though, doesn't ensure a tougher schedule. Indiana is an example of that last year. You still play 9, but you don't. It doesn't ensure you play there is a way that ensures you play your best conference teams. It doesn't exist.
No, but that's part of the mystique of college football. Like, other sports have always been about finding the best team. For college football, until recently, it was about having the best season. It wasn't necessarily about who was the best. It was about finding the magical thing where you had the right team and the right schedule and the right bounces, and here you are. And are you that much better than a bunch of teams that are a little worse than you? Probably not, but you're still really good.
And for over 100 years, it was even worse than that, because, we're the Big Ten. No matter who wins the conference, they were going to play the Pac-10 champion in the Rose Bowl, and that's the only thing that is going to happen at the end. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree with you. So that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, that is where we will end for today. So I want to thank everybody for listening. Mike, you can find him at Alibaba26, and we will post all of his links and sites down below. Thank you for being here. Take care, everybody.
Yeah, thanks for having me.